Ancient Egypt is one of the most intriguing ancient civilizations in history. Not only are they among the most prominent, but they're also one of the world's first civilizations. The ancient Egyptians built incredible palaces, tombs, and pyramids. Many of their inventions were among the most sophisticated and refined in antiquity. Not only was the society they built interesting, but their mythology and beliefs were also captivating as well. So much so that we continue to learn everything there is about the ancient civilization. Join me as I go through some of the most incredible and unbelievable discoveries in Egypt. From a mysterious mummy wrapped in a foreign book to incredible magic amulets, here are 15 amazing discoveries in Egypt that scare scientists. Number 15. The mummy wrapped in a foreign book. In 1848, a Croatian official known as Barak traveled all the way to Alexandria, Egypt. At the time, it was popular for tourists vacationing in Egypt to take home the ancient artifacts left behind by the past civilization. An artifact of historical significance could easily be bought for just a few dollars. Barak came across a female mummy encased in a magnificent sarcophagus and decided that it would be worth it to buy. He was among the countless men who purchased mummies and other Egyptian artifacts. People from Europe and America were all eager to get their hands on something from ancient Egypt after Napoleon's military campaign in Egypt in the 1790s. Upon returning to his home in Vienna, Barak decided to display the mummy. He removed the female mummy from the sarcophagus and unwrapped the bandages covering her. He displayed the mummy upright in his sitting room, and it remained there until Barak's death. I don't know why anyone would want to have a mummy in their sitting room, but I guess it was some sort of macabre fascination that compelled him. The mummy and the wrappings ultimately found their way to the State Institute of Croatia, Slavonia, and Dalmatia, also known as the Archaeological Museum of Zagreb. It was then that the experts noticed something strange about the wrappings that were once covering the mummy. Unlike the linen bandages that covered ancient Egyptian mummies, sheets filled with foreign symbols were used to wrap the female mummy. Initially, people believed the symbols indicated an Arabic translation of the Book of the Dead, but that wasn't the case. More than 10 years later, the wrappings were examined more thoroughly, and it was only then that scientists realized the answer. The writing wasn't in hieroglyphics. Instead, it was Etruscan. And so, the Linen Book of Zagreb was discovered. The Etruscan language is relatively unknown, and to this day we still don't know what the writings entail. Experts believe the book can be traced back to the 3rd century BC. The Etruscans were among the first civilizations on the Italian peninsula. While we've known of their existence since the early centuries, there's something incredibly bizarre about a mummy wrapped in a book written by these people. How did an Etruscan linen book end up in Egypt in the first place? Some claim that perhaps the mummy was a wealthy Etruscan traveler who perished in Egypt. In accordance with their customs, she was mummified and wrapped in Etruscan linen to follow the rituals of Egyptians and pay homage to her origin. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now. Number 14. The long-lost land of Punt. Gold, ivory, ebony, exotic animals, and lots of riches. These are the words associated with the long-lost land of Punt, a vibrant land that even the great Egyptian civilization respected. Thousands of years ago, between 2450 and 1155 BC, the land of Punt was a rich location. People from ancient Egypt traveled to Punt to buy gold, resins, African blackwood, ivory, ebony, exotic pets, and even slaves. Engravings and reliefs showing the land of Punt can be seen in temples in ancient Egypt. And yet, for some strange reason, we're yet to discover the exact location of this almost mythical land. Unlike the almost barren land of the Egyptian desert, the land of Punt looked like it was surrounded by tropical land and forests. This led researchers to believe that the rich land is located in Africa. In 2020, archaeologists in Egypt discovered the skull of a baboon that might be able to reveal the location of the land of Punt finally. With the help of the skull and modern technology, we might be able to finally unravel the secrets of the rich land. This kingdom was most likely located in Somalia, southern Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. To determine the exact location of Punt, scientists plan on tracing the origin of the baboon. It was most likely that the animal was obtained from Punt, and by tracing its molecular map, scientists will be able to determine the kingdom's location. Number 13. The disappearance of Queen Nefertiti. In 1336 BC, Queen Nefertiti, one of the most prominent figures in ancient Egypt records, vanished from history. No records of her death or her tomb were ever discovered in ancient Egyptian texts. It was incredibly bizarre, considering the queen was a prominent ruler during her time. She ruled the land of Egypt during a time of cultural upheaval. Together with her husband, Pharaoh Akhenaten, she resurrected ancient Egypt and held on to her power for 17 long years. It was unclear what happened to Nefertiti after she vanished from the ancient records. Some theorize that Queen Nefertiti ruled as a pharaoh while pretending to be her husband or someone else. To this day, scholars still have no conclusion as to what happened to her, but many believe that the queen simply died. And yet, it's bizarre that her death wasn't properly recorded or written down in ancient records. Some believe that Queen Nefertiti was driven out of Egypt, while some think that when Akhenaten died, Nefertiti assumed the role of pharaoh under a new identity, Smenkhare. In addition to her assumed identity, the final resting place of Nefertiti is also yet to be found. However, an archaeologist is now claiming that he will discover the tomb of the long-lost queen. Egyptologist Zahi Hawass believes that the mummy of Nefertiti is hidden somewhere in Luxor. There's no news about the discovery of the queen's mummy yet, but we might finally hear more about it in the future. Number 12. Egyptian blue. Blue is a beautiful color, one of the rarest colors in nature. There aren't a lot of species in the world that are blue. For this reason, historians and archaeologists are fascinated by the ancient Egyptian civilization. After all, they were the first to produce Egyptian blue, the oldest known artificial pigment. Egyptian blue is actually calcium copper silicate. It's one of the earliest artificial pigments used by mankind. The oldest example of this color was discovered in a tomb painting created about 5,000 years ago. In the past, the ancient Egyptians used this color to give life to portraits, tombs, sarcophagi, and statues. Here's where it gets interesting. The blue color of this artificial pigment can be quite hard to obtain if you don't know the correct process. The intensity of the hue depends on the presence of copper. To obtain this artificial pigment, a mixture of calcium compound, silica sand, potash, metal fillings, or malachite is heated at an extremely high temperature of around 850 to 950 degrees Celsius. How the ancient Egyptians learned how to extract this color is still a mystery, but in a stroke of brilliance, they did. And ever since, it's become the symbol of the heavens, nature, and the universe. Blue was also the color of water, and it was associated with the Nile that gave birth to the life flourishing in the land of Egypt. Number 11. The mystery of the Dendera. Take a look at this relief and tell me what you think. This photo shows a portion of a wall in one of the most well-preserved temples in Egypt, the temple of the Egyptian goddess Hathor, or Dendera. In this photo, you can see several people holding an unknown object, an object that many suspect is a light bulb, also known as the Dendera light or the Dendera lamp. This relief allegedly shows people of ancient Egypt carrying a light bulb connected to a source of electricity. Now, you're probably wondering why anyone would even believe this theory. For one, its shape is somewhat similar, and the non-existence of soot and black smoke in dark Egyptian temples and tombs makes people wonder if the ancient Egyptians somehow got their hands on flashlights or light bulbs. Some dismiss the Dendera light bulb as nothing but a silly theory created by people. Still, some believe that its existence proves that the ancient Egyptians were indeed the most brilliant civilization that existed. Oh, and of course, some believe that extraterrestrial creatures assisted the ancient Egyptians. While it's fascinating to think about the possibility of ancient Egyptians getting their hands on an actual light bulb, it's more likely that the Dendera lamp is a strangely drawn lotus flower. According to the ancient Egyptian myth, the one depicted on the temple walls is a great god. He rose from a lotus flower and has been worshipped by the people of the land ever since. A light bulb or a coincidence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Number 10. The ruined pyramid of Djedefre. 5 miles north of the Great Pyramids of Giza are piles of stones. These are the ruins of the Pyramid of Djedefre. Djedefre was the son of Pharaoh Khufu, the same ruler who built the Great Pyramids. Unlike the massive structures erected during his father's reign, the pyramids of Djedefre were nothing but a pile of rubble. It's still considered Egypt's northernmost pyramid, but many wonder why it was decimated, who did it, and what was their motive. Several archaeologists believe that the Pyramid of Djedefre was among the most beautiful of the pyramids. It had a polished interior, and granite imported from outside ancient Egypt was used during its construction. In fact, it was so incredible that it was named Djedefre's Starry Sky. Unlike the pyramids constructed around the same time, the chamber of Djedefre's pyramid was made beneath the entire triangular structure instead of within it. Archaeologists believe that the pyramid captured the eye of the Romans because of its sheer brilliance. When the empire captured Egypt, it was among the first ones they destroyed in order to build their own structures. Number 9. Ancient Egyptian clock. Aside from their fascination with the afterlife, the ancient Egyptians were also extremely dedicated to worshiping their gods and goddesses. They ensured they would please their deities on their days by religiously keeping track of time. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to develop the most refined and sophisticated clocks. In 2013, archaeologists discovered the oldest ancient Egyptian clock in the Valley of Kings. This flat piece of stone might not look much, but it's the oldest sundial ever discovered in Egypt. This ancient clock's origin can be traced to the 19th dynasty, or the 13th century BC. It was made of a flattened piece of limestone known as ostracon. A black semicircle was engraved on it with 12 sections. The sundial, just like the more recent ones, uses sunlight to tell the time accurately. According to archaeologists, the simplicity of the sundial indicates that it was merely used to measure work hours. After all, contrary to what most fictional works led us to believe, the ancient Egyptians valued their time, and workers were known to organize strikes if they weren't treated fairly. Another clock used by the ancient Egyptian civilization is the water clock, or clepsydra. Unlike sundials, this clock was made of stone vessels with sloping sides that allowed water to drip constantly. Through this, the ancient Egyptians could track time almost accurately. Fortunately, today, we only need to glance at our watches to know the time. Number 8. The hidden chamber of the pyramid. The Great Pyramid in Egypt is one of the most well-recognized symbols of an ancient civilization. At first, archaeologists questioned how people from thousands of years ago built such an incredible structure. In time, we managed to find the answer. Builders in ancient Egypt were rewarded for their service, not only with riches, but also with food. These pyramids were built to honor the pharaohs and the deities of ancient Egypt. But just when we thought we had already discovered everything there is to know about the pyramids, modern technology revealed something that we missed. The 4,500-year-old Great Pyramid in Giza has a hidden chamber that we have yet to explore. Also known as Khufu's Pyramid, the Great Pyramid has several chambers inside, one of which was the secret void. With the use of cosmic ray particles, experts were able to get a glimpse of the pyramid's interior. But to this day, we still don't know what's hidden inside the void. Number 7. The female pharaoh who wore a fake beard. Hatshepsut was a queen who ultimately became a pharaoh of ancient Egypt. She was often depicted as a woman wearing a long fake beard. To this day, she's still recognized as the greatest female pharaoh who reigned more than 3,000 years ago. In the early 2000s, a mummy was discovered in Egypt, and it wasn't until years later that scientists confirmed the mummy was none other than the queen herself. Number 6. The Lost Labyrinth of Egypt. Since the 1800s, archaeologists have claimed that a massive labyrinth is hidden beneath the sands of Egypt. This maze is allegedly more significant than the pyramids that stand over the land today. This lost labyrinth is allegedly located beneath the Black Pyramid dedicated to Pharaoh Amenemhat III. According to archaeologists, this labyrinth consists of several complex buildings with galleries, gardens, and courtyards. And yet, no physical evidence of this labyrinth has ever been discovered. In the 1800s, the foundations of this so-called labyrinth were allegedly discovered by archaeologists. However, no visible evidence was ever released. Archaeologists believe that the remains of this labyrinth were destroyed under the reign of Ptolemy II, who built the city of Shendit to honor his wife, Arsinoe. If a labyrinth is hidden beneath Egypt, it might be hailed as the discovery of the century. Number 5. A battle decided by cats. There's no question that the ancient Egyptians loved and worshipped cats, so much so that they would shave their eyebrows whenever their feline companion died. Yes, I'm not joking. In fact, their love for cats was so well known that their enemies used it against them. Ancient Egyptians believed that cats were the manifestation of the goddess Bastet. That's why they made sure to take care of them. In the 6th century BC, the Battle of Pelusium began. The Persian kingdom waged war against the Egyptians, and to outwit their enemies, the Persian king Cambyses II had a brilliant idea. In one of the battles, the Persians put cats in front of their soldiers, using the cats as their meat shields. Of course, the ancient Egyptians were reluctant to kill the cats, fearing the wrath of the goddess Bastet. Ultimately, the ancient Egyptians chose to flee, leading to the first successful Persian conquest. Number 4. Fake Egyptian tomb. More than an entire century has passed since we began excavating Egypt. To this day, there's still much more for us to discover. From 1798 to 1801, Napoleon Bonaparte set out on a campaign to Egypt. For this reason, the entire continent of Europe was obsessed and needed to know everything about ancient Egypt. Europeans traveled all the way to the land just to buy a mummy or an ancient artifact. At some point, the public's fascination with the ancient civilization dwindled. But in 1922, the world's interest in ancient Egypt was fueled once again by the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb. During these crazy periods, many tomb raiders and looters took advantage of the chaos to rob tombs. Many artifacts and mummies interred in these tombs were stolen and illegally sold to people with the money to buy them. Recently, authorities discovered another scheme done by fraudsters who wanted to take advantage of the historical artifacts and take people's money. Earlier this year, authorities in Beni Suef discovered a fake tomb that was built to attract tourists who were interested in artifacts and archaeology. An elaborate tomb was built, with walls adorned with hieroglyphics and pictures. A massive sarcophagus was also right in the middle of the tomb. Handmade statues were also discovered inside. A clueless visitor wouldn't be able to tell that the tomb wasn't genuine. For this reason, authorities suspect countless people have been conned into paying for an exclusive glimpse of an untouched tomb. But in reality, the inscriptions and depictions on the tomb walls didn't mean anything significant. All the artifacts in the sarcophagus inside were also bought at Khan al-Khalili Street, an area that sells a lot of souvenirs. So if you ever plan on visiting Egypt, just make sure to be extra careful. Number 3. Oldest mummy in Egypt. In January 2023, archaeologists discovered a mummy covered in gold leaf near the Step Pyramid in Saqqara. The mummy was named Hecatompylos and was discovered inside a shaft 50 feet beneath the ground. Hecatompylos' body was surrounded by artifacts and several statues carved in the likeness of servants, and presumably his own family. Archaeologists believe the mummy's origin can be traced back to the 5th and 6th dynasties of Egyptian rule, about 4,300 years ago. Despite the beautiful statues and the artifacts surrounding the mummy, archaeologists believe Hecatompylos wasn't royal. It's highly likely, however, that Hecatompylos was an elite member of Egyptian society. After all, the level of mummification his body underwent was only reserved for those who could afford it. Although mummification and preserving the body of the deceased was a custom for ancient Egyptians who valued the afterlife, not everyone had the privilege of being mummified adequately after death. Number 2. 16-meter-long papyrus. Earlier this year, an exciting discovery was revealed to the public. An ancient papyrus that measures a staggering 52.5 feet long. The papyrus was discovered in a casket in Egypt's Saqqara region. The papyrus contains passages and images obtained from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Originally, the papyrus dates back to 50 BC. There is no question that the ancient Egyptians were incredibly obsessed and fascinated by the afterlife. The Book of the Dead isn't really a single book. It's a series of ancient Egyptian texts that help the people of the ancient civilization to journey safely toward the afterlife. Essentially, the Book of the Dead is a guidebook for when you die. Sounds macabre, doesn't it? This book includes chapters and spells. It tells an individual all they need to know for their spiritual journey in the afterlife and how to navigate successfully for eternity in the underworld. Hymns and prayers for gods and goddesses are also written in these books. And mind you, the ancient Egyptians worship over 2,000 deities. Aside from its content, the papyrus itself is incredible. The material was used for many purposes in ancient Egypt, and it's among the very first materials used for writing and preserving texts. This material was one of the many gifts to ancient Egypt from the Nile River, where thousands of papyrus plants grew and flourished. And now it's time for today's topic. Scientists in Egypt just announced that while looking for Cleopatra, they found an untouched miracle. Queen Cleopatra, or Cleopatra VII, reigned over the land of ancient Egypt as co-regent for almost 3 decades. Today, the queen is known for her trysts with the powerful rulers of Rome, including Julius Caesar and the Roman general Mark Antony. Because of her beauty, intelligence, and charm, she earned herself a spot among the most recognized figures in history and myth. Cleopatra ruled ancient Egypt, and her reign was full of trials and tribulations. On September 2, 31 BC, Roman forces defeated the soldiers sent by Cleopatra and Antony in the Battle of Actium. Egyptian vessels fled back to their land, and Roman forces seized Alexandria. It was amidst this battle that Mark Antony heard the news that Cleopatra was dead. After hearing the tragic news, Mark Antony fell on his sword, thinking that there was no point in living if his wife was dead. Cleopatra, on the other hand, was alive and breathing. On August 12, 30 BC, Cleopatra ordered her most trusted servants to lead her to a chamber to bury her deceased husband. Cleopatra never left the chamber again and joined her husband in the afterlife. For years, historians and archaeologists worldwide have tried to find the location of Cleopatra's tomb. However, scientists recently discovered an untouched tunnel over 4,200 feet long and more than 42 feet deep at Taposiris Magna in northern Egypt. Artifacts, statues, and a collection of coins were discovered around the site, basically finding a gold mine of ancient Egyptian artifacts that had never been touched by any archaeologists or looters before. Excavations are still underway, but who knows? We might be hearing about the discovery of Queen Cleopatra's long-lost tomb soon. As always, comment down below with the hashtag today's topic, and let us know your opinion about what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 1. magic amulets protecting the dead. In the past, archaeologists had no choice but to open tombs and sarcophagi to find out what was hidden inside them. This led to some artifacts and tombs being damaged irreparably, which might also mean that we lost valuable information we could have otherwise obtained. Today, however, we now have advanced technology that helps archaeologists to unobtrusively examine the artifacts and mummies we discover. Earlier this year, archaeologists discovered several magic amulets inside an Egyptian mummy, known as the Golden Boy mummy, named for being wrapped in a golden exterior. The remains were discovered in 1916 in southern Egypt. It wasn't until recently that scientists tried to find out what was inside the mummy. After using a powerful scanner, a hidden collection of 49 magical amulets were revealed. Each amulet seemed like it was carefully placed to protect the young boy and energize the dead body. In the past, the ancient Egyptians used amulets and other artifacts to protect not only the living, but also the dead in their journey to the afterlife. Aside from the amulets, the boy wore a pair of sandals to protect his feet on his journey after death. What's more, the boy's tongue was also capped in gold. The ancient Egyptians believed that gold was made from the gods and goddesses themselves, and having a golden tongue would allow the dead to converse and negotiate with Osiris, the overseer of the afterlife. From the countless artifacts in the boy's body, it was clear that he was incredibly loved throughout his short life. Ancient Egypt truly is an interesting civilization. In the future, there will be a lot more things revealed about this civilization. Before you go, I want you to comment down the most interesting fact in this video. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on the screen right now. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.